everybody. Let's get things rolling. We're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, folks, thanks for coming out tonight. Obviously, the big item on the agenda is talking about the Caton Farm Bruce Road bridge and the extension and connections and all that good stuff. So I appreciate folks taking the time to come out. I know that we get a lot of calls on this, so it'll be good. Why don't we start with a roll call? Alice, oh, you're over there. Sorry. Yeah.
Alderwoman Bartleson. Here. Alderman Peretta.
Here.
Alderman Vandermeer. Alderman Deskin.
Here.
Alderman Smith.
Here.
Alderman Gulogly.
Here.
And Alderman Capadona.
Here.
Alderman Pacheco.
Here. All right, very good.
7 present.
Now, we also need to do roll calls, I believe, for the townships and for Homer. Is that correct? Do we want to do it that way? All right, Denise, you want to go?
Yes, Supervisor Ron Alberico. Here. Trustee Mike Kelly. Trustee John Bodisich. Trustee Barb Boyce. Here. And Trustee Mike Lewandowski.
Supervisor Pam Myers. Present. Trustee John Kruzak. Here. Trustee Vicky Bozen.
She will be late.
Will be late. Okay. That's all for us. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else want to do a roll call? Homer Glenn.
Mayor Yukich. Trustee Netsky Troiki. Trustee Caprio. Trustee Rogers. Trustee Suisse. Trustee Costa. Trustee Berrien.
All right, very good. Actually, I wish we had a big round table because I feel like it seems a little ludicrous for us to sit up here looking down. This is really a conversation that I just want to have. I mean, about a year or two ago, I, really started talking with staff about the bridge and how do we alleviate traffic here in Lockport. As all of us know, the bridge can be very, very congested. I live on 9th Street. I watch the line of traffic stretch past my house and go all the way down what seems to be the highway. So it's been a very important piece of transportation that we wanted to address. Of course, it's a lot bigger than that. It involves where it starts and where it stops. And I think while most of us, or most of the folks that I know, don't have any issues with where it starts in the west and how it comes over the river, it's really where it terminates has been the big point of contention. I think it was we asked the county to kind of sit down with us and explain to a number of folks some of the things that we as newly elected officials, were unaware of. And I know this can be frustrating for staff who's been around for a long time and sees people come and go. But the fact of the matter is we represent people who have questions that I can't always answer. And so when people ask me why the middle alignment, I have I'm like baffled because when I look at a map, it makes no sense. So we asked the county to come in and explain things to us. Larry Walsh, county executive, said, Steve, you seem to have a lot of concerns. Why don't you bring this meeting to your town, and then invite, Homer and the townships and stuff. We could televise it and get it out there. So that's what precipitated this meeting. That's why we're here tonight. So I suppose after that little introduction of what's going on, does the county, did they want to kind of have their engineer get up and do a short presentation? Is that what the goal is?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have engineers from Civil Tech, and the folks that have worked on that study will be here, and they're sitting behind me here. They can introduce themselves and come up to the mic and kind of go through the presentation that some of us have seen, but most have not. And there's Bob. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is, can everyone hear me? Does it work? My name's Bob Andres. I'm with Civil Tech Engineering, and we're part of the consultant team that's been working on the Phase 1 study for the Caton Farm Bruce Road bridge crossing. We have Christina Kupkowski here from the Will County DOT. Also from Civil Tech is Mary Young and Joel Christel, who are they're the environmental lead and the project manager for the project. And we have Mike Makovic from Christopher Burke Engineering, also on our project team. So we're all here tonight, and this has been a project that's it's a project that's been going on for a very long time. It started in, I think, 2000, It's a difficult project. There are some significant challenges with locating where a bridge would be, and it has had a long history to it. And what the county DOT asked us to do is come tonight and kind of give an overview of what has happened, what we've studied, what the study was based on, and where we stand in the process. This is a very expensive undertaking to build a river crossing, and the approach roadways that would be needed is going to cost several $100 million. And there's only one place where all of that money could come from, that's from the federal government. So we're following a federal aid process to do all the environmental studies and follow the environmental laws that are needed in order to bring a project such as this forward. The magnitude of the project is such that it will probably not be built as one project. It's hard to get dollars that large to build it. So probably it'll be built in stages, but we do need to have an overall plan for the project and have the approvals necessary to be able to move forward with parts of it. What I'd like to do is just very briefly talk about some of the perspectives that we deal with. As you know, the Spanish River has been a barrier in Will County for as long as Will County has existed. What that does is it concentrates traffic at the few river crossings, and the Elmer Route 7 bridge is the only crossing for about 7 miles. And when you know, living in this area, you know what the consequences of that are. There's been calls for new river crossings since the 1960s, and I think that's the one thing everyone can agree on is that another river crossing is needed of the river. Will County, historically, as the highways developed, they were developed around farm-to-market roadways at first, and then bedroom communities, commuting primarily, to and from Chicago. So the north-south roadways have been developed to a greater extent than east-west roadways. And as this area develops, there's more and more demand for east-west travel in this area. IDOT in the early 90s did establish a system of arterial highways called the Strategic Regional Arterial Highway System. What that was a realization that in our region we'll never be able to build enough freeways or tollways to handle the long-range mobility trips that are needed. And so they've created a class of roadways, of arterial roadways, that emphasize mobility. Now, most arterial roadways provide mobility and land access. And what the SRA system does is emphasizes mobility over land access through access control, how often you can have driveways, how often you can have traffic signals, and just how signals are timed and interconnected. And the Caton Farm Bruce Road corridor is part of that system. In terms of the regional highways in this area, it's well served. The I-355 has been constructed. I-55 has existed for many, many years. All of the planning that has been done for this study is based on the regional transportation plan. And in the Chicago region, the planning agency, which is called the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, their job is to come up with a long-range plan. So all efforts to improve roadways are coordinated. And in the regional plan, the I-355 extension has been that plan for decades. So all the planning that has been done for this corridor was based on completion of I-355. So it's not something that the construction of that tollway has changed the dynamics of our study. It's always been part of our study. If you look at this exhibit, you can see where the access points are for the tollway. The tollway did, when they built it, they acquired land to be able to have an interchange at Bruce Road, but there is no plans for an interchange there in the regional transportation plan. So our study does not include any interchange of I-355. Now, one of the things that sometimes we lose sight is what are the benefits of good transportation. Quality of life is one of the big things that if you can't get to your soccer game across the river, that affects your quality of life. Good transportation affects economic growth and prosperity, and so those are things that can accrue if we have a highway network that can serve traffic very well. We need a long-range vision. We need to look into the future. One thing that we come across in many of these projects is people don't want to change things. They say, it's like, let's not change and just not do anything. One thing that happens, or that we always say is no build does not mean no change. Change happens whether we plan for highways and build a quality network or not. Development is going to occur whether the highways are there to serve them. One of the things that is desirable is to plan for change, to know what's coming and have a plan to do it rather than to react to that change on a piecemeal basis. And so there is really an opportunity in this project, and I would say a responsibility for elected officials to assure that whatever the plan is, when that is decided, that land use decisions and development decisions are compatible with that. And that's going to be difficult as property owners come in and say, I don't like this, I need a driveway here, I don't like losing right-of-way. That's something I think is your responsibility, is to make sure that whatever the long-range plan is that it can be implemented, because you're at the front line of making sure that can happen. Now, I talked about the SRA system. In the early 90s, IDOT did SRA studies for about 1,500 miles of these important arterial highways. In this area, the original corridor for the SRA was US Route 6 and Illinois Route 7, right through the center of Lockport. They did a study. It was a kind of a preliminary phase 1 study, and as a result of that study, they saw the limitations as to what you could do to handle traffic in downtown Lockport, what the impacts of that would be, and as part of the study, they moved the designation, the SRA designation, to Caton Farm and Bruce Road. Now, those don't connect with each other, and they had a north-south connector part that originally was to go along Cedar Road. As part of the SRA study, there was opposition expressed to the Cedar Road connector, that because of some of the schools and facilities along that section of the roadway, that the locals at that time did not want this SRA designation to be on Cedar Road, but that's how the SRA study was developed. As I said, in about 2000, we started this phase 1 engineering study, and this was a study that was going to follow all of the federal criteria to look at all of the environmental constraints in the corridor, what the transportation needs are, what the cost would be, look at comprehensively at all of the possible alternatives, and come up with a preferred plan for that study. Part of the study was to look at Cedar Road and determine if Cedar Road was really the best place for this north-south portion of the connector. The termini of the study were, one of the requirements of the federally process is to have logical termini. In other words, you got to have a project that starts at a reasonable place and ends at a place, and it's compatible with what's planned at those two endpoints. And so the FHWA determined what the logical termini for this project are. What I'd like to do is invite Mary up here to talk about kind of the study, where we've been and where we're at, and then I'll come up when she gets tired. So,
my job is to talk about the last 15 years in under 10 minutes. With any project, you have to follow steps, and the first step is to define a project purpose and need, and then develop alternatives to address that purpose and need. So during the course of the project, our first step was to develop a purpose statement, and that was basically to come up with a transportation system improvement that addressed capacity, safety, and operational needs, as well as address future travel demand needs, 2040 travel demand in the corridor along Caton Farm Bruce Road between US Route 30 and 159th Street at Cedar Road. Specifically, we wanted to address 5 needs, and those are to accommodate population and employment growth, what is anticipated over the next 20 to 25 years, improve system linkage. That's just basically saying we need a new bridge. We need to create a connection. To accommodate the transportation demand that is associated with whatever growth occurs. Optimize modal interrelationships, and that's basically just a fancy way of saying that we need to plan for pedestrians and cyclists and provide people a good way to get to transit, and then to improve travel safety as well. We looked at safety along all the various roadways in the corridor. Ooh, geez, I'm flying along here. I'm sorry. So the next step then, after we had our purpose and needs statement defined, we then looked at alternatives, and we worked with the TCC to develop these alternatives for a couple years, between 2002, 2003. We developed, I think there were 15 alternatives. They're kind of hard to see on here, but basically if you look at the west end, there's kind of a spaghetti bowl of various color alignments, and then the same thing on the east end. There's a whole bunch of different alignments that we looked at. Through some preliminary studies and coordination with the TCC, all but 3 of those alternatives were eliminated. Our next step in the process, in the federal aid process, then was to go to the regulatory agencies. And because of the magnitude of this project and the river crossing associated with it, we're following a process called the NEPA 404 merger process. And what that is the National Environmental Policy Act and Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. It's a policy that, or a process that has been put in place, so all of the regulatory agencies that have some sort of jurisdiction over the project come together, review everything at the same time. They look at the purpose and needs statement, they look at alternatives, kind of their check boxes along the way to make sure we're following all the rules and regulations so that we don't propose something that can't get permitted later on. So we started that process, kind of unveiled what the coordination that had happened with the TCC, and those agencies said, whoa, wait a minute. You haven't even convinced us yet that Caton Farm Bruce Road is the best place to put the bridge. So we took a step back and needed to look at river crossings all up and down the corridor in this area. And on the exhibit you're looking at right now, there's 3 purple corridor crossing locations that were historic corridors that had been looked at, but are really out of the study area, so those were eliminated pretty quickly. That left us with 6 crossing locations, the yellow dashed lines on there, within what is considered our study corridor area, that we needed to do further investigations on to see if one of those locations was actually a better spot to put the bridge than at Caton Farm Bruce Road. So in conjunction with those 6 crossing locations, 14 alternatives were developed, and hopefully you can see all the lines on here. Again, we've looked at crossings all the way down from Theodore, Roslyn, all the way up to Thornton and Renwick. Our next step in that process was to start evaluating these alternatives. Well, actually, let me take a step back. Each one of those alternatives, the 14 alternatives, we developed concept plans for, and they all consisted of the same features. And those were to have 2 through lanes in each direction. There would be a center median for left turn channelization. There'd be intersection improvements at certain locations if we needed right turn lanes, things like that. They all had sidewalk on one side, a bike path on the other side, and that we assumed we would acquire a 150-foot swath of land to construct those improvements. So with those features, we then started screening those 14 alternatives. And the first step was to eliminate any alternatives that didn't meet the project purpose and needs statement. If it didn't address those needs that we listed, those 5 needs, then it was eliminated and didn't go through any further studies. An alternative was also eliminated if it affected nature preserve. Nature preserves are protected by state and sometimes federal regulations, and so anything that touched that was kind of off limits. The next level of screening that occurred, we quantified impacts to a whole bunch of features that are listed here. We quantified the acres of wetlands and floodplains that would be filled as part of the project. If there were any historic structures or properties impacted, we identified those. Threatened and endangered species, I'm sure most of you here are aware of the Heinz emerald dragonfly. That played, the dragonfly is still playing a big role in defining our project here. And then finally, displacements and right-of-way acquisition. We identified residential and business displacements that would occur, as well as acreages of right-of-way acquisition associated with each one. So of those 14 alternatives, we We did these 2 levels of screening, and we eliminated alternatives that had greater impacts but provided, but when there were alternatives that provided the same benefits, we eliminated ones with the greater impacts. And I want to talk briefly, I'm not going to talk about all 14 of them, that'll take way too much time, but I do want to touch on Cedar Road. I know this has come up in the past. Cedar, of the 14 alternatives, we eliminated 8 of them, which included all of the alternatives that included the Cedar Road alignment. And the reason that was done was because the Cedar Road alignment, when comparing it either to the Gauger Road or middle alignment, had some, what I would call significant greater impacts than the other 2 alignments. And just to highlight a couple of those, the Cedar Road alignment, either when you compare it to the Gauger or the middle, would either have 3 to 6 or 6 more acres of impact to the floodplain. It could affect 1 or 2 more historic properties, and there could be as many as 6 more displacements. When this information was presented in 2007 to the TCC, it was agreed that because of that the Cedar Road alignments would be eliminated, that both the Gauger alignment and the middle alignment met the needs of the project, but with less impacts. This chart just shows, it lists out the 14 alternatives that we looked at, and it identifies the 6 that we recommended to carry forward, which were the Caton Farm Oak and Gauger and middle alignments, the Caton Farm Oak Bruce Gauger and middle alignments, and the Caton Farm Bruce Gauger and middle alignments. So in 2007, this exhibit just illustrates those 6 different alternatives. In 2007, we presented these 6 alternatives at a public meeting. We had attendance at the meeting. The one thing is that there was no significant support or opposition to any one specific alternative. There were people in favor and against all of them pretty equally, pros or cons for them. So then we started looking at, we needed to drill down a bit further to start eliminating alternatives. And one of the areas that really became a significant point to look at was the river valley. And this has to do primarily with the Heinz Emerald dragonfly. There's a portion of the area of the river valley which is highlighted in yellow on this. It's on the east of, I'm sorry, I can't think which road that is. It's just west of the river, down in the river valley. And that has been designated as critical habitat in the Federal Register, which basically means that that is an area that is not touchable. It's an area that is critical to the well-being of the dragonfly, the continuation of the continuing population of the dragonfly. As you can see on here, the alignments, the line at the top, the Bruce Road alignment, the blue one, that's where Caton Farm connects directly to Bruce Road, and then down further in pink is the Caton Farm connecting to Oak Avenue. The Bruce Road alignment touches the tip of the dragonfly habitat. Not only the habitat, but also there's a buffer area associated with it that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has designated as kind of a no pun intended, no fly zone for roadway improvements. So plus the Bruce Road alignment impacts, it kind of bisects Delwood Park West, and we would need to acquire about 4.5 acres from Delwood Park West. So for both of those reasons, all the alternatives that had a bridge at Caton Farm connecting directly to Bruce Road, we eliminated from further analysis. So we had 4 alternatives left, and really all 4 of those alternatives have comparable quantitative impacts. One of them may have more acquisition than the other, but that alternative may have less impacts to wetlands or less displacements. Overall, they were generally pretty comparable to one another. So we looked at things from a qualitative standpoint, and the first comparison that I'll make has to do with the Oak alignment versus the Oak Bruce alignment. This is, when you look at these roadways, the Oak Avenue is classified as a local street. And that's basically due to the land uses associated with it. There's a lot of residential, there's some horse farms. It's very, what I would call a minor street. Whereas Bruce Road, in the area of our study, part of it is considered a collector roadway, and then part of it is considered an arterial roadway, which is a roadway that is designed by its nature to carry traffic, carry regional type traffic. And through the years, the development along both of these roadways has been consistent with those functional classifications that they have. Along Bruce Road, there's been subdivisions built that have been set back from the roadway. The appropriate right-of-way has been set aside to someday widen Bruce Road. That hasn't been the case on Oak Avenue. There would be considerably more right-of-way acquisition and impacts to residents along Oak Avenue. So for those reasons, we recommended that both of the alignments that extended along Oak Avenue be eliminated from further study. And that left us with two alternatives. Oh, jeez. Okay. That left us with two alternatives, the Caton Farm Oak Bruce corridor, that with both the middle alignment and the Gauger alignment. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Bob. He's going to take it over from here. So that was less than 10 minutes, I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. As Mary said, we were down to two alignments, the Gauger Road alignment and the middle alignment. One of the things that was apparent from the traffic forecasts for the project is that whatever we build here is going to attract a lot of traffic. The forecasts were prepared by CMAP, that they're the regional planning agency, and they are in charge of all of the the crystal ball as to what the travel demands are, and they have predicted that the river crossing could carry as many as 40,000 cars per day in the year 2040. Now we have updated the forecast throughout this period of our study. I think we started with 2020 forecast and went to 2030, and then we got 2040 forecast from CMAP. But they predict a very heavy traffic volume at the river crossing. Now this volume goes down as you go further east or west of the river, but the river crossing, according to the forecast, would still several miles away would still carry a substantial amount of traffic. And if you look at crossings up and down Des Plaines River, you can go to the IDOT website, and they have traffic maps that you can look at, and you can look at all the river crossings up and down the Fox River or the Des Plaines River and look at what the volumes are on the river crossings and what the volumes are east or west of those river crossings, and they're all substantial. They're all in the 25 to 40,000 vehicle per day range, and that's basically what CMAP has forecast for this crossing, is that there would be as many as 40,000 cars per day crossing the river at this new crossing. Now, to compare that to the existing bridge at Route 9, right now it carries, I think, about 25,000 cars per day. So it's a substantial amount of traffic. Now, accommodating this growth, part of our study is what do we need to do to handle this traffic growth? And as Mary said, the concept plan for this project would have a wide right-of-way. It would have a 150-foot wide right-of-way that would serve the long-term needs for the roadway and as well as for bikeways and sidewalks. Lockport has done a very good job of planning for the future. When you guys have properties annex or redevelop adjacent to roadways, you've had them dedicate land. For example, Bruce Road has a wide right-of-way associated with it. I think you've even set aside some land on the middle alignment with some of the development that's occurred there. When you look at Gauger Road is an historic road. It's got homes that have been there for a long time. It's got some new subdivisions. To provide this cross-section on Gauger would impact both the historic homes as well as some of the subdivisions. There have to be property acquisition from the backyards of some of the developments that have already occurred on Gauger Road. So our conclusion was that to provide a large footprint for a roadway on Gauger isn't totally compatible with what exists on Gauger. Another impact of using Gauger as this north-south link for an east-west roadway, that you kind of double link the traffic. You take some heavy east-west traffic and you put it on a north-south section of Gauger Road. And so the traffic goes up quite a bit on Gauger Road. And you need two large intersections at Bruce, Gauger, and at 159th Street in Gauger. You need intersections that accommodate 4-lane roadways as well as dual right and dual left turning lanes on that. So the intersections get to be pretty substantial. This may be hard to see, but this is the 2040 forecast for the Gauger alignment. And what this says is that if Gauger Road was chosen as the preferred plan, it would carry in 2040 as many as 22,000 cars per day. Now that's nearly as much as is on the Illinois Route 9 bridge right now. And right now Gauger carries about 7,000 cars per day, so it'd be a tripling of today's traffic on Gauger Road with construction of this bridge and facility and the development in the region. Cedar Road would have about almost 13,000 cars per day. Right now, Cedar carries about 10,000 cars per day. So there would be a moderate growth on Cedar over this period of time with the Gauger Road alignment. The middle alignment, what that does is it actually relieves traffic somewhat on Gauger and Cedar. The middle alignment would carry about 17,000 cars per day, according to this forecast. Gauger would have about 10,000 cars per day. So it would be maybe 40 or 50% more than the traffic that's on Gauger now, but it would still be in the range of a 2-lane road as opposed to a 4-lane road. When you get above 15 to 16,000 cars per day, it's kind of the break point between needing a 4-lane road instead of a 2-lane road. That during peak hours, when your daily traffic exceeds that threshold, people say the road's congested, they look for alternate routes, they try to cut through neighborhoods and things like that. So, that's kind of an important break point when we plan highways is, should it be a 2-lane road or a 4-lane road or even a 6-lane road? When you get above about 30 to 32,000 cars per day, you're in the range of needing a 6-lane roadway. With the middle alignment, the traffic on Cedar Road may in fact go down below what today's value or level of traffic is. So the middle alignment has some benefits to existing land uses along Gauger and Cedar. The impacts aren't as great, and it still serves the travel demand for the corridor. Now the middle alignment, we believe, provides a rare opportunity to plan the future land uses to be compatible with the roadway. I mean, when you widen Gauger Road to 4 lanes, that's going to impact people who live there and the existing land uses. When they bought their homes, they didn't anticipate a major highway in front of them. The middle alignment is in the middle of nowhere, so you can plan land use to be compatible with that. You can have access that works. You can protect it from highway noise. There are benefits to having the road go through some virgin land, to end up with a good transportation facility and properties adjacent to the roadway that are compatible with that travel demand on the roadway. Now the selection of a preferred alternative, it was put before the Transportation Corridor Committee in May of 2009. They looked at the impacts, what the benefits are of each of these alternatives and what the detriments were, and they selected the Caton Farm Oak Bruce middle alignment as the preferred plan. That was submitted to the county board in July, and the county board concurred in that. Having picked a preferred plan, we could now go forward with environmental and design studies. In other words, if we know where the best place to put the roadway is, then we can do the detailed studies to see how we make that road fit within the context of its alignment. And there's a number of studies there's several studies that are still happening. The Heinz Emerald Dragonfly is an ongoing effort that seems to never end. and as well as historical and cultural resource coordination. We've completed special waste studies, and we've completed the draft environmental assessment. There are some design studies that also have to happen. We're doing bridge studies right now to come up with the kind of the concept for the bridge, what the bridge would cost, what it would look like. We finished the drainage studies and roadway studies, and we're looking at the what's called MAP 21. These are the federal aid requirements for the project. To get all the federal approvals is ongoing, and the construction phasing plan is ongoing, and a draft design report is in progress. The next steps is to complete the dragonfly coordination with Fish and Wildlife, complete the coordination that's required. There will be a public hearing where we would go forward and present the preferred plan to the public. If all goes well at the end of the public hearing, and if we get concurrence by the regulatory and resource agencies, Federal Highway Administration would issue a finding of no significant impact. That's kind of the goal of the study, is to come up with a plan that does not have a significant impact on the environment, and then we get design approval. That would position the project to be able to be designed in stages. If we ever get a infrastructure bill out of Congress, there'd be the hope that there could be some money allocated towards this project. And that completes our presentation. I hope we didn't go too long. I would open it up for maybe questions, perhaps starting with Lockport, and then we can go to the other agencies here.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
In regards to Bruce Road, some of those subdivisions, I know you mentioned Lockport did good planning as far as allowing enough room to go from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. With the additional traffic, will some of these subdivisions need stoplights to go in their subdivisions?
The need for stoplights is kind of, it's based on how much you're delayed on the cross street. That's when you get the calls to say, my gosh, I got to wait forever, I need a stoplight. And it's really based on the frequency of gaps during peak times in traffic. If you have heavy traffic on a 2-lane road, if you're approaching 15,000 cars per day, there's very few gaps, and it's very hard to get in and out of cross streets. When you widen the road to 4 lanes, you create the opportunity for people to pass slower vehicles. There's more spacing between cars. There's more gaps. If you have a center median where you can, like a 2-way median, you can make a left turn out of a driveway or subdivision in a gap in traffic in one direction, pull onto the median, wait for a gap in the other direction to accelerate. So when roads are widened, often the need for traffic signals goes down, that you get fewer complaints. If traffic keeps growing on the 4-lane road and gets approaches 30,000 cars per day, then you're going to have people who want to have traffic signals. And
With the preferred route with the middle alignment, there will be an increase within Gallagher Road. I think you mentioned currently 7,000 going up to about 10,000 per day. Because as it is right now, because I live right off of Gallagher Road in one of those subdivisions, it's difficult as it is to turn left to go north just because of the current traffic. And that's some of the comments I get from a lot of the residents who live in and around Bruce Road and Gallagher Road is the additional traffic. And I know this addresses a lot of those.
it won't solve that. In other words, if you have trouble getting in and out in peak hours on Gallagher, in any of these plans, you'll have the same or greater difficulty getting in and out in the future. Traffic signals, you can't put signals everywhere. In fact, on an SRA route, IDOT would limit the frequency of signals. The idea is to promote mobility, and so on an SRA route, you may make a right turn and then come somewhere, make a U-turn to go back in the other direction, so you don't have to have a signal to interrupt that. But signals do create gaps in traffic that, when you have a signal, and your driveway's downstream from that signal, you are going to get gaps, and so there would be some benefit.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have a few questions. First, I'd like to say thank you for your information you're sharing this. There's a lot here tonight to digest. The first thing I'd like to bring up, and I did find this on the website, so maybe you can help me if it's still on track, but the Phase 1 engineering is completed in 2015. Is that correct? And is that
Completed in 2015?
That's my understanding, in 2015.
I would say, the people who know are shaking their heads no.
Okay.
It's-
That's just what I seen, so I just wanted to make.
Yeah, that was, I think a couple of years ago, that was the hope. And
Okay.
it's, this project is just, it continues to go on in the phase one.
So the phase one engineering, which has to be done before phase two, obviously, that is not even like probably close to being done then, maybe halfway.
Not in 2015.
Okay.
We're close to the finish line
Okay.
for phase one. I mean, we've jumped through all the hoops, we've gotten many of the approvals that we need. We think the rest of the approvals can be obtained. We have to go back to the public, have a public hearing, and then we need to get support from elected officials, and so we could finish the phase one in 18? Only in 18 months. Okay, 18 months. Mary and I have been on this project from the very beginning. We were a lot younger, a little better, but
Another year and a half, we're saying?
say another year and a half, assuming that we go forward with the direction that we've
So we
gone.
have another year and a half. I'm just kind of put a little time frame into this perspective. We got another year and a half in phase one, then we got phase two. In order to complete phase two, now you even have to have funding for phase two. So that's going to be another process, who knows that time frame, correct? I mean,
It depends on how much money is obtained. The bridge is the main event, but that will require a lot of money.
so I guess what I'm asking is phase two funding being seeked now to carry on?
It goes hand in hand with a construction segment. In other words, if you're, if the county picks a section and says, we want to build this part of it, then you would seek construction funding and engineering and right-of-way acquisition funds at the same time for that section, not for the whole project.
Okay. And I know you did state that this will be done in stages too, so, again, I don't know where does one start, where does one end on this whole thing? I'm not
Well,
real sure, but that's okay. I mean, you said it was in stages, so, so that was kind of one thing, but I guess just to clear things up, we're talking the SRA. Where is most of this traffic coming from? Is it coming from 159th to go over the new bridge, or is it coming off of 355?
There's some of it coming off 350. It's really coming from area development, that as areas develop, you get more homes, you get commercial. That's where the bulk of the traffic is
So
coming
you're
from.
saying by going the middle alignment, you're appeasing the eastbound traffic from the east side, and then you're also getting some from the 355 traffic, is that?
355 is pretty well served by 159th Street right now. I mean, there's an interchange there, and, I'm not sure we're going to draw a lot of traffic. It depends on how congested downtown Lockport is. That, you're likely going to see a balancing of travel times. When a street network gets saturated with traffic, people look for alternate routes, and they try different routes, and what happens is over a short period of time, you get a travel time equilibrium. So if you stay on 159th Street, suffer through downtown Lockport, it takes you the same time as if you go south, take the new bridge across and travel. So what happens is you'll get kind of an equilibrium set up where travel times for any of your choices are comparable.
All right, those are some I had, thanks.
I have a few comments. Jerry, you want to go first?
I just had just the one question. This project is designed basically just to move traffic, and we're not saying this is an alternate truck route of any sort, or, I mean, when you get trucks involved, do we design differently if this is a truck route, or if this is pedestrian, traffic, regular pedestrian vehicles? I mean, how is this designed, or explain that to me?
Well, it's designed based on what the travel demand is going to be. I mean, decisions as to whether trucks are, for any federal aid project, generally you need to let trucks use that roadway. And so the trucks are going to use the route that saves them the most time. And so if this route does provide a travel time savings compared to going through downtown, people will use the roadway. But the design is based on the your traffic and the number of trucks that are forecast. You come up with pavement design and corner radii and things like that. So it would be designed to handle trucks. It's not that trucks would be prohibited from this route. Would trucks be prohibited somewhere else and forced on this route is something we don't answer with this study. That's at a different level than we would deal with.
Okay.
Okay.
Got something, Darren?
Yeah. Since I found out about this 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, that y'all were going to be here, I've kind of been obsessed with learning everything I can. And I have been to the website, and I have studied all the minutes from all the meetings. I've looked at all the material for related to the public hearings. I have reviewed city council meeting minutes. What I think I was most disappointed, just for Lockport, I can't speak for Lockport, Homer Township, or Homer Glen. I can only find one night where anybody came to the city of Lockport, which happened to be exactly 6 years ago this evening. And the city council was presented much of the same. After hearing that, my comments and public comments in the meeting minutes was that I opposed the middle alignment because, quite frankly, it makes no sense. All right? What does make sense is to use the current roads, not only from just looking at a map standpoint, but looking at a cost standpoint. I've looked at the 2030 Will County 2030 transportation plan, and it's real simple. It says we're going to build 4 lanes from here to here. Projected cost in $2,400 is this. One of the routes is from Archer Avenue to Cedar Road, 4.5 miles, $56 million. Another route is, an improved route is from Route 6 along Gauger Road, 4 lanes to Bruce Road. And what happens here is everything that I've read is Bruce Road and Gauger Road becomes the intersection, and it impacts everybody. And so I also recall that this is at least a 20-year-old thought process. And if we go back 20 years ago, 355 was never going to be built in our lifetime. It was never going to be built. And so this route, the entire purpose of the study was predicated of getting traffic east and west, from the west going east, and get it to an intersection 159th Street. And according to what I've read, and I won't speak for Homer Glen, but I did read in the earliest stages, in 2002 and 3, that Homer Glen objected to the Cedar Road SRA route for no other reason that they didn't want the congestion at Cedar and 159th Street. However, and once again, I cannot speak for Homer Township, Homer Glen, and Lockport Township. I can only speak for what happened in these chambers. And what was presented 6 years ago was take it or leave it. It's not your fault, sir. It's Will County's fault. You just did what you were asked to do by Will County. What is really interesting here is all of my comments and all of my research was summarized in a letter that Homer Glen presented to the TCC on April 14th. It wasn't even published on the website until Monday. So when I initially looked at this information for all the minutes, it didn't even exist last week. I know that this goes all the way back to 1995, because in the letter that was presented to the TCC by Homer Glen, it states, a letter dated June 25th, 2010 to Mr. Henry Meter of the Will County Farm Bureau. Mr. Gould noted, at the time of the approval of the logical termini for the project, it was not known when the I-355 extension to I-55 to I-80 would be constructed, or if there would be an interchange at Bruce Road. For this reason, I were established as U.S. Route 30 and Illinois Route 7, matching the approved SRA report for the corridor prepared and approved by IDOT in 1995. And that's key, folks. We are using 1995 data. Unfortunately, sir, that is what you were presented to go ahead and determine. I'll let the mayor of Homer Glen to go ahead and discuss this. But what's really interesting here is if Homer Glen, back in as early as 2003, objected to a terminus at 159th and Cedar Road, all I did was go ahead and I did Google Earth, and I went from the western edge of Cedar Road to the eastern edge of the middle alignment, and it's 750 feet, which tells me this is a Cedar Road terminus. Whether we want to do it in intellectual, say, well, it's not really, but it is. And so I'm in full support of Homer Glen's objection to the middle alignment. However, I'm more really interested in Lockport. What we have in an S-curve portion of that road goes through property that, according to our development plan, is zoned residential. That road goes in, we lose that. Not only do we lose the residential at the eastern portion, we also then lose the commercial industrial portion on the western part of the middle route. And so, when we talk about quality of life, and for residents of Lockport, sir, and for anybody from Will County, it's sitting on that stinking bridge for a half hour, 5 days a week. That's the quality of life. But it's the economic growth and prosperity that we saw in one of your slides. This road, the middle alignment, inhibits our economic growth and prosperity to the tune of millions of dollars, far more over the next 100 years than the cost of this road. Once again, sir, I'm not blaming you. I'm blaming Will County to allow this to go through. This should have terminated the moment that Governor Ryan was in Lockport in 2005 and said, we're going to build 355 because that is the north-south terminus. I'm
All right, Darren, why don't you
disgusted
take-
and
look, Darren,
I'm almost done.
That's good.
I am in total and complete opposition to the middle route. I am in full agreement with Homer Glen's point of view, which is the terminus is at 355 and Bruce Road. After all, the 4-lane road is already in Will County's 2030 plans. I am also in total agreement in the Gauger Road alignment. For no other reason is we're talking about a grand total of about a half a mile of new improved road that isn't on the current Will County 2030. And if I have to compare the cost of a third of a mile or a half of a mile or a quarter mile improvement of Gauger Road with a 2.5 mile 4-lane road to nowhere, then I'm quite sure that the taxpayers of Will County would say, hey, spend a few million on Gauger Road, don't spend $100 million on the middle alignment. That's all I have to say.
All right.
Could I? Could I respond to a couple of the points you made? I'm not trying to refute everything you said, but one point is the Transportation Corridor Committee had representatives from every community in both townships that attended all those meetings, and it was their responsibility to come back to bodies such as the City Council to inform them of what's going on. And if the council wanted the county or the project team to make a presentation, we were always available to do that. So I mean,
I understand,
it's not like this happened in a vacuum.
But our minutes reflect that this is a matter of information, no action required. So it's basically a take it or leave it. And that's what was presented to us in 2006. That's what was presented to us in 2009. And that's what was presented to us this evening.
The other point I would make is you said in 1995 that there was no hope of ever building 355. 355 has always been in the regional plan. It's always been expected that it would be built. For a decade or more, they didn't know if it would be built. But all of the planning was based on on the fact that that roadway would be there.
I just quoted,
He was going off of what,
I
And
just
and I'm
quoted
just
what
for- I'm correcting for
Mr.
the
Gould says. And Mr. Gould says it was, this whole thing was predicated on the fact that 355 wasn't going to be built.
it was,
There were times when people lost hope.
well, yeah, and that's kind of what the problem is with these big projects. We think they're never going to happen, but, 20 years goes by quickly, actually. Well, look, I'd actually like to take some time and hear what our guests have to say. I know Darren made some comments about Homer's thoughts. Part of this issue is that we have new officials here, people who have, may have different opinions than because of changes that have happened. I do have a number of cards up here. I've got, Pam Myers, did you want to get up and speak? I'd like to go through some of the cards first and hear what our guests have to say. Let's just hear what our guests have to say. We can talk all day long up here. So, so Pam, what do you got? Do you want to speak, or do you have comments that you want to say?
Yes.
Well, come on up to the podium.
I do have actually official documents for the record as well that I'd like to have entered. My board had reviewed these plans back in 2014 and had asked me to submit a letter to Mr. Gould, which I'd like to submit as evidence. And just a synopsis, I don't want to take a lot of time because there are a lot of other people that have not had a chance to speak on this. I don't want to just keep going. I know we've been at other meetings, but I've been a trustee for 2 terms at Homer Township, and I was a supervisor for 2 terms. I'm in my 2nd term right now. And I do agree that there probably were some sporadic meetings of the TCC. But for example, the meeting where the vote was taken to use this middle alignment, according to the engineers and Mr. Gould, was on May 19th of 2009. And the people that were supposed to vote on the TCC were mayors and township supervisors. A lot of the decision-making, I understand it by listening to the Highway Department and Civil Tech, were made by a lot of the staffers, not necessarily by pure vote. And I was sworn in on May 18th of 2009 as supervisor. I wasn't even aware of the meeting or that there was going to be a vote taken. I don't believe it was appropriate per Open Meetings Act. I know when we have agendas and stuff, we have to put issues that are going to be voted on. I was not aware, having only been in office 1 day, that the meeting was even taking place. But yet that was the meeting that was supposedly pivotal, as I've attended a lot of meetings. And then that was the impetus for the group, or the, I'm not sure who the group was, because I know the TCC didn't go to the county board. But Mr. Gould had mentioned early on that he had portrayed that there was unanimous support for the middle alignment when a resolution was brought forward to the Will County Board and approved. So I think there's some problems with public input. I know my residents have indicated all along that they have not had opportunities to participate in this process, and I think that's something that we would like to, address. With regard to CMAP, so you mentioned their crystal ball and how they're, well-respected with planning, and I do agree with you. And I think it's well-known that there are 2 agencies combined, NIPSI and Metropolitan Planning, correct. So I do agree with you that they probably do have a finger on the pulse. But I guess maybe you could answer for me then why, when I go to CMAP's website, their last SRA map, which was dated 2/21 of 2012, is still showing SRA 303 going along Cedar Road. They're showing no middle alignment. They're still showing the projection for the Cedar Road. So obviously, we've talked to a few people at CMAP. There's no official position, but nobody has confirmed that they have endorsed this middle alignment. So I'm not sure why you're bringing up CMAP. And, I think we all agree that we do want another bridge, and, there's no sense in talking over this. Perhaps the cost of not creating a whole new roadway might actually make the bridge realistic, I've heard so many different stories now. I'm hearing phase 1 isn't complete. I've heard phase 1 was complete. I think I've had the good fortune of being able to attend a lot of meetings, and I'm confused about the facts. And I'm not aware of minutes ever being approved. I did finally start attending some meetings as I was informed, like around 2011, 2012. There wasn't a formal process, not like we're held to. And as I mentioned at the last TCC meeting, you know, to have, even if all the supervisors and mayors were present at this meeting, we were called and we were said, this is it, vote, take it or leave it or whatever. We don't have that autonomy to do that. We need to go back to our boards, to our public, and get direction. We don't have the authority to just start making this stuff up and say, oh yeah, Lockport's in favor, Homer Township's in favor. So the process is flawed. And again, I have statements. I hope that you'll have copies. It gives a little bit of my historical perspective. And I thank you all very much.
All right, thanks. Jim, why don't you go ahead? You had something to say?
For me, being one of the newer aldermen, I just wanted to first say that I appreciated the process, that not knowing about this project and not knowing everything. I see your map with all the landmines, per se, of where you got to stay between and all the federal regulations and everything and your alignments. I was happy to see that you actually looked at all these different routes and everything. So I applaud you on that. The one thing that's missing that may alleviate a lot of this stuff, you talked about all the traffic counts would increase on Gauger or Cedar and how that would work, but if it connected to 355, there was no study, and unless I missed it, that you talked about how that may decrease some of those, that traffic on those roads, because some people may be going north on Gauger to get to 355 from that point, trying to get to any of those areas. So a connection, a direct connection, may alleviate a lot of that traffic in a lot of those areas there, which, you know, out of all the, you know, dozens of studies that you guys did, that was one that I was kind of hoping for, seeing that's the main flow. You're connecting another main artery. How does that connect? And I think that for you to do due process to look at that may be very important for everybody here, because that may resolve some issues that everybody has.
And I think actually that is one of the problems. And as I feel like, you know, with the comment that, you know, Darren read earlier about Mr. Gould thinking, oh, you know, I-355 is pie in the sky, that a serious connection at intersection here was never truly considered. And I think you're right. And Darren, you make a good point. I think the economic impact of a middle alignment for Lockport is, it's true, it eats up a whole bunch of real estate that could be developed. It completely passes over our interstate, which means there's no economic benefit at that intersection anymore. And I'm still, and like I think you just mentioned, Jim, I'm completely baffled by any truck that's trying to get, or any car that's trying to get to I-355 is going to cross over I-355, go north, and then backtrack. It's just seems ridiculous. And then I guess I don't really understand how federal roads and state roads work together, if ever. But because you said so much of this money is federal money, that to just dump the entire middle alignment altogether, if you connected I-355, just go north. Let that, you have a, well, what is it, a 4-lane road now? You have a 4-lane road that exists right now that you can drive north from Bruce Road and get off on the and get off at 159th. The idea that, you know, there's tolls or something like that, you know, tolls don't come from Mount Sinai. We can work that out. We can work with IDOT. Maybe there's ways to figure it out so people aren't getting nailed with a toll to go from Bruce Road to 159th Street to go east from there. I mean, we have an existing road that's built already. If we make an intersection, it has great economic impact for Lockport then, because now we have a new intersection. It doesn't eat up our existing residential that's zoned that way. It doesn't displace a bunch, it's that much less displacement, and it's that much less cost to build this road that maybe, like I think Pam was mentioning, maybe a little less of these other roads can bring this into a little closer to reality. All right, that's just my piece real quick. Who else? Mary Ellen, you got something to say?
Mary Ellen White, I live in Homer Township. I have an email. I was in contact this morning with a Michael Sipinski, and he happens to be the principal of the William E. Young School. He asked me please to share information with you. Thanks,
They
Pam.
said they can't hear you.
Okay. Homer School District 33C constructed William E. Young School after consultation with the Will County Department of Highways and Will County Land Use Department in order to make accommodations for the future expansion of Cedar Road and to best protect the safety of its students. An additional 4-lane road to the west of us. Now, this projected middle route will come right behind the school and take a little portion of their playground area. So they now are going to be sandwiched between 4 lanes on Cedar and 4 lanes behind them. And this is totally unacceptable. He also mentioned that he had spoken with Joe Herminus, who is the Deputy Fire Marshal of Homer Township Fire Protection District, right next to the school. He had not been consulted on any of these plans. In addition, in his 5 years as principal of William E. Young School, I have never been directly contacted for my input on this proposed 4-lane road by Will County. We hope they reach out to us. I also have a copy of a resolution that was signed by District 33C, Homer Consolidated School District, resolution opposing the Caton Farm Oak Bruce Middle Alignment as the preferred improvement plan. And this was signed by the President of the Board of Education, adopted on the 26th day of August 2014. So basically, the principal of this school, that's approximately 5 years old, just wants to totally protest the unacceptability of 4-lane road in front of his school and now sandwiching in behind of his school. And his concern is the safety of his students, concern with the air quality, and just plain concerned with the safety faction. So I can leave these to go on record, a resolution and his email to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Any other council members have something to say quickly before I move on? Okay. Let's see. Mayor, do you want to speak? Somebody put your name down. I don't know if you want to, if that were from you. If they volunteered you. That's a,
Thank you. My name is George Yukich, Mayor of Homer Glen. There's been a need for additional bridge across the Des Plaines River Valley for quite some time. The Village of Homer Glen and its board and I completely support the efforts of the Transportation Corridor Committee and the Will County Department of Transportation to develop a plan for the location of this new bridge. However, the Village of Homer Glen is concerned about the alignment of the road system east of the proposed bridge, more specifically between I-355 and 159th Street. The Village of Homer Glen has voiced its opposition to the proposed alignment connecting 159th Street, both in resolutions passed in 2003 and in 2007, as well as recent correspondence to the Illinois Department of Transportation, the Chicago Metropolitan Planning Agency, and Will County. Our opposition to the middle alignment can be summarized by the 5 points. With the project expected to cost over $500 million, where will the funding come from to pay for the project? Even if the state or federal dollars are obtained for all portions of the project, typically matching funds are required by the local agency. So are the local agencies prepared to pay tens of millions of dollars for these potential funding matches? Will the county pay for the required matching funds? 2, the proposed middle alignment SRA is planned to be located directly behind the new William E. School on the west side. The school already has a Cedar Road SRA on the east side. Thus, having the SRA both on east and west side of the school cannot be the best alternative for the safety of our children. The proposed middle alignment will, in effect, split this section of Homer Township in half. This, along with the uncertainty of development of this road and the way it adversely holds these properties in limbo. This will also have a stifling effect on development in the areas of the township, including the development of the city of Lockport. The addition of the 4th north-south route within the 1.5-mile corridor is not only repetitive, but it's unnecessary, but goes against CMAP's principle of 2040 planning, as well as the February 26 Caton Farm Bruce Road study, which references the need to create a well-spaced grid network of arterial routes. The termini points of the proposed SRA route were reportedly set by IDOT back in 1995, long before the construction of I-355. We have been told by the county that these termini points cannot be changed. However, in a recent conversation with Mr. Bennett from CMAP, he noted that in fact they could be changed. An example of this was proposed Schoolhouse Road SRA, where the northern terminal point was changed at the request of the Village of Homer Glen several years back. The Village of Homer Glen fully supports the construction of a new bridge across the Des Plaines River. As our village has concerns regarding other aspects of proposed Caton Farm, Bruce Road SRA alignment. And so as not to delay the development of the bridge, the Village of Homer Glen requests that the proposed Caton Farm, Bruce Road SRA be phased to allow sections west of I-355 to continue, while allowing the section east of I-355 to be reviewed at a later date. And finally, in the April 2015 TCC meeting, village staff members in attendance requested from the county and consulting engineers that the members of the TCC will be provided with copies of the various documents and reports, or at least that they'd be made available. We would like to request an update on when we could expect to obtain the information so that we may be better educated on this issue. And there was a comment up here before that there would be no impact. What I'm trying to figure out is if there's, who are you saying there's not going to be any impact to? I mean, do you guys live here? Do your kids go to the schools here? It's, you know, you have all these landowners that have owned this land forever, and now we're cutting it in half and we're taking it away. So I myself would like to see a reason of why we can't change this. Nothing's written in stone. And then, as the mayor here said, with 355, why can't you join into 355? It's already built, we spent the money. State of Illinois is broke. Quit spending the money. Thank you.
All right, Richard, you got something?
Yeah, the middle route cuts through our 70-acre farm.
Forgive me, Richard, I should have said this earlier. Just state your name so when there's minutes or
Okay,
something.
yeah, Richard Schroeder, 15017 West 163rd Street. That's a little bit west of Cedar on the south side of 163rd. And we have a 70-acre farm there, which will be dissected if this middle route is ever built. Takes out our 1830s home, takes out our machine shed. Then they come back for drainage. They take out a related living second home and a horse barn. So they clean me out pretty good, and I'm not able to go from, if this happens, from one side of the farm to the other because it's a limited access highway. So I'll have to go out onto 163rd to get from one side to the other. That's ridiculous. But anyway, stating that, I have a letter here that I'd like to read and later submit it into the record. Most feel the proposed Des Plaines River Bridge is okay. However, the proposed middle route to connect Bruce Road to 159th Street is still totally unacceptable. At the TCC meeting of May 19th, 2009, Mr. R. Andrews of Civil Tech stated the proposed middle route is incompatible with the land uses along its corridor. At that same meeting, the Stockport stated they would not protect the corridor for the proposed middle route. And now, newly planned and documented developments are on the books. At this juncture, right at today's date, there is a severe conflict between the existing infrastructure of farms, businesses, homes, residential developments, and future developments with the middle route. The middle route is not an infrastructure improvement. The only way to resolve this conflict is to eliminate the middle route and replace it with one along an existing road. If the SRA project is split into phases to get the Des Plaines River Bridge built first, there must be an ironclad agreement that the proposed middle route be totally and completely dropped. Any money spent so far in the SRA Phase 1 study on the middle route are very small compared to the astronomical amount to be spent on constructing the unneeded middle route. Any real estate tax dollars generated from land under the route corridor would be replaced with high construction costs and annual high road associated maintenance costs. The fact that acquisition costs for land required for the proposed will be high, since it will have to be purchased and not donated, must be considered. Mr. R. Andrews of Civil Tech is quoted in writing as stating land acquisition costs will be a substantial part of the total roadway costs. At the April 14th, 2015 TCC meeting, Mr. Andrews stated that frontage roads would now be required for the middle route and land and construction costs would be required. Sound attenuation will have to be paid for if they want it by adjacent landowners. Will County Board member Mr. Corey Singer is quoted in meeting minutes stating that the Will County resolution for the middle route could be changed and arrangements could be made with the state of Illinois for a change or elimination of this route. The Chicago Metropolitan Area Planning CMAP Chair, Gerald Bennett, who I've talked to personally, has looked at the maps. I took my board over there. He said that the middle route is, quote, costly, overkill, and existing roads should be used. Reference has been made by the Will Highway Department that developers may be asked to improve certain sections of the road to accommodate the SRA. Financially, with their projects, can they do this? That's a question. We have been told in the past that the SRA would not be could not be connected to an interstate road. However, Claire Bozak, who we contacted of CMAP, provided documentations that this can be done. The SRA at Boughton Road is connected and terminates into I-355. Recently, the Will County Highway Department said they won't consider I-355 since the east terminus of the SRA is located near 159th and Cedar Road. However, if you want to use this terminus, I-355 connects to 159th Street. All you have to do is go east and you reach this terminus point that way. So this is not an issue that's a moot point. Land has been purchased for an interchange with Bruce Road and I-355. Therefore, this connection can easily be made. Obviously, I-355 is a fully vetted existing venue without any EP, floodplain, etc. issues. It's also equipped with sound attenuation and over underpasses which are very efficient compared to stoplights will be required for a proposed middle route. I-355 also needs no land acquisition. There's no cost for that. It's fully constructed, maintained, and operational. The cost savings by using I-355 versus the proposed middle are very substantial and can amount to tens and tens of millions of dollars. Another advantage of I-355 is there is no conflict with present infrastructure and future development of an unacquired corridor such as the middle route, bisecting present and future development. In conclusion, the overriding advantage of the use of I-355 interstate would require minimal study for approval. Construction time is close to zero, except for the interchange, which is planned to be built in any case. Other distribution of traffic to and from the proposed Des Plaines River Bridge can be handled by the existing grid of roads east of the bridge, which are all scheduled for improvement in the Will County 2030 plan. And I think existing roads, and especially I-355, needs very serious consideration. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard.
Okay.
And then Brian?
Well, I guess look, my name is Brian Kaminskis. My address is 15026 West 163rd Street. And I will be right at the corner of a beautiful 6-lane highway trying to get into my driveway, I'm gonna get killed. It's right there. You try to pull in my driveway with a 6-lane highway right there. Quality of life, gone. I have to pay for sound barrier? Think I could afford it? Why don't you guys come up with the money? Or buy my house. You go live there. I'd like to see you guys live with the trucks. I got away from planes, trains, and automobiles. I used to live by Midway. I came out here for quiet. That's all I have to say.
That's all the cards I have right now. I know that sometimes people come to a meeting for the first time, they don't understand how it works, and that you fill out a card and you present it to the clerk so that you have a moment to speak. You know, without opening it up to 50 people possibly wanting to talk that aren't on the cards, if anybody's here who has things that they want to say, please feel free to email me. If you have a pen, my email is streit, S-T-R-E-I-T, @lockport.org. I want to make sure I hear folks. I mean, I see a lot of faces here that, you know, if there's things that people want to say, please, I want to make sure there's opportunities to do that. You know, anything else from the council before I kind of wrap this up?
Is there an opportunity for feedback from this meeting so that the county and everybody can respond to the comments that are here, or is that just informational only?
Well, I think it's been a little, I asked it for this. I mean, when I went to county, it was, we had this meeting, and I'm like, okay, I want this meeting for residents, and I want it televised, which I think the other one was, but it's hard enough to watch this meeting. Well, who watches a county meeting, right? So, anyways, I just wanted the information out there better. I am looking for a little feedback. This isn't just a venting session. I think we need to have a little more discussion now with the county. So we will certainly follow up with it. I know Mayor and the Township, Pam, and and Ron, I think we need to powwow a little bit and bring our concerns back. I mean, you know, for me, as even I think Richard mentioned, you know, using the existing I-55 route, I understand there's problems. There's a toll in between those two. That would have to be moved. People aren't going to use this if they have to get off, pay a toll, get back on again. But like I said, these things aren't engraved in stone. I mean, a toll plaza is easier to move than buying all this land and you know, really killing our economic impacts that we would have by developing it. So, any case, I think there's some discussion that needs to happen. I think the county's is very clear now that there's not a lot of public support for a middle route. Maybe there's some folks that are fans of it, but I have yet to hear of them, and I'm not saying that, you know, sarcastically. I just have not heard from the public anybody who's rallying behind a middle route. So what I would like to propose is, you know, folks, if you're in Lockport Township, if you're in Homer Township, or if you're in Homer Glen, contact your respective supervisors and mayors, give them feedback. You have my emails to contact me as Lockport, and if I need to forward you on to your supervisor, I'll certainly do that. But, you know, one of the things, and I'll bring this up to everybody, one moment, sir. Is that Bob? my main man, Bob. One thing I'll say is some of the pushback I've heard from the county is this: hey, we've already spent the money. If you guys are going to blow this up now, the project's dead. Well, to me, that's, you know what, here on one side, oh, the project's 40 years out, and another thing is like, oh, if you pull the plug now, or if you change it now, the project's dead. How can it be dead if it's 40 years away? It's not, it's not, but we need to talk about this. The other thing, too, is, quite frankly, and I run this by council, but I would like to discuss the possibility of, if it's going to cost a little bit more money, I would like to, you know, put before council that we pony up to do it. If this is a $2 million study, we're only talking about a small section of it. It's not going to be another $2 million study. We just need to, you know, review this extra piece. And so phase one is not currently done. If the municipalities, you know, the two townships and the two cities are willing to put some money to this I think it would be money well spent. I don't want to say, hey, look, the money's already been spent by the county, and we have no choice. That, to me, that just seems foolish. So I will like to propose that out loud to our friends here who are in the room tonight. So anyways, unless anybody up here has any last go. Bob, what did you want to say? Keep it short, Bob. I've heard your reputation. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Am I making a mistake, Cam? Is this a mistake?
Yeah. Oh, I thought you said yeah. I thought you said Pam. I was going to say yeah. Pam will say yeah.
You know what? It was my morbid curiosity. That's why. So go ahead, Bob. Yeah.
Bob Schmidt, 14339 Independence Way, Homer Glen, Illinois. I commend the people for showing up. And I'm convinced us that that is the right thing to do in our community. It is obvious that a bulk of people here don't like your plan. They don't like what you're doing with it, and especially the lady in the middle. I don't know who her name is. I would like to know more about you. Only because I won't go there. Anyway, Homer Glen, Homer Township, Lockport Township have been mayors, have been neighbors for years. We have always worked well together, and it will never change, irregardless of the road. But the one thing that you've always got to remember is the government don't care about us. The government is for the government. All you have to do is look at Washington. So, ladies and gentlemen of the board, remember in your heart what you stand for. Okay? Our home comes first. Thank you.
All right, Bob, thanks.
Mayor?
Yeah, Pam.
Please forgive me. I do have one question, and it's after your statement.
Yeah.
You had mentioned, and I do agree, we've talked about trying to get together and powwow, and maybe we can come up with some ideas. A resident brought to me today, and I apologize, I don't have a copy of a Southtown article where I believe it's Ms. Kopkowski was interviewed, and she can answer for this. The statement was that the alignment is there, it's not going to be changed, and that's it. And I'm wondering if it's worth all of our efforts to meet and try and come up with something if that's the attitude of the County Highway Department.
Yeah, it is. It's worth it. It's, we'll have, I think, reasonable people can have a discussion. So I believe that will happen, and we'll be okay. Yes.
Just want to thank you for taking the time to have all of us here and getting all of this information out.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Absolutely.
By all means. By all means.
Thank you.
Before I let you guys go, I know this really isn't, I just want to throw a suggestion out. I don't know if it's even possible, but as we look at this bridge congestion, you know, and knowing that even if everything goes forward, it's still many years, is it actually possible to, because right now there's 2 lanes on that road and there's, on that bridge, and there's 2 emergency lanes that are wide enough to hold a car. Is it possible to take one of the emergency lanes, turn it into a lane, so 2 lanes of traffic go west, a single lane of traffic continues east, and 1 emergency lane left? I'd like to just talk to you about that, or maybe if I don't know if that's a county thing or if that's something we should talk about, Ben, or something, but it seems like there's two full lanes on that bridge that do nothing all day. And there would still be one that's left for an emergency if something happens. So I still think, you know, maybe some short-term solutions I would like to still discuss. So I don't know if that's, I mean, obviously that's probably not what you guys would. Yes, okay. Okay. Okay, okay. All right, so forgive me, but let's look into that, Ben. I mean, maybe it's completely unrealistic, but
Yeah, we could talk to our liaison with IDOT, and I think the fire district would probably have some say on that too in regards to traffic and emergency lanes in both directions were probably required, but it's an interesting idea. We can look into it.
all right. Well, look, let's wrap this piece up. I appreciate everyone coming out tonight, and we'll keep moving forward with this. So thank you. Yeah.
Oh, do we need to adjourn?
Do we need to? Do you need to adjourn? I'm terrible.